Broadcasting from the campus of Salisbury University, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. It's time for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
It was early Sunday morning when a gunman opened fire at a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, called The Pulse, and left 49 people dead and more than 50 wounded. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. His name was Omar Mateen. He was in his late 20s, the son of Afghan immigrants. During the confrontation with police, he called 911, pledging his allegiance to Islamic extremist group ISIS. And when this program was first planned, these events had not taken place. The subject was not on our agenda. This morning in our studio, we have folks from Camp Rehoboth, an LGBT organization, and we want to explore the recognition of transgender people in American society, and we will. But of course, we must first turn to our guests to talk about the events in Orlando. We have Andrea Connor and also Jamie Marine, both transgender, and then Sal Seeley, who is with Camp Rehoboth, and welcome to the program, first of all.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, let me just get certainly the reaction to what happened in Orlando. Andrea, what was your reaction? When did you learn about it? What was your sense about what had happened?
I found about it on the way to work. It came across as on the radio. It's senseless. I know not all Islamics are extremists. It's just sad that we just can't get along and accept each other for who we are.
Was it a surprise at all to you?
Yes, it was.
And what's is it just the quality of the numbers, or is it
just for the fact that it actually happened, and the huge numbers it's not astounding. I mean, you get in a crowded situation like that. I mean, there's bound to be large numbers of fatalities.
Jamie Marine, what about you? When did you hear about it, and what was your own reaction?
I actually, I woke up, I had just come back from the Trans Health Conference in Philly, and it was on Facebook, and it's absolutely heartbreaking, really. Just to think that anybody was really capable of anything like that.
Does it make you more aware of how dangerous the world could be?
Yeah, it really does. Like I said, I just came from a conference, and you have to think there's so many people in one area at one time, and you realize that there actually are people that are that dead set against you that they could do harm, and in such mass numbers in one place, it's very scary to think about.
Andrew, what about you? I mean, and you've been out for a very long time, but if you go into a crowded place, does it make you look a bit over your shoulder, maybe more cognizant of that, maybe, or does it? I don't know.
Yeah, it does. When I originally came out and started living full time in '93, back then, you had to be cautious of where you went and what you did, and make sure that nobody was following you. And then as life has progressed, it's gotten better, but now it seems like we're reverting back some, and you're hearing more violence, and it is scary. I mean, I carry protection now when I go out, and being the CEO and chapter leader of the Delaware Renaissance Support Group in education, I have to be out in the forefront and help bring those people who are gender fluid or trans, that we have community, you have protection here, you have support. So,
by the way, what kind of protection do you
I have a taser. My adoptive family gave me one. When I carry a CDL license, so I drove for about a year, and being out on the road, they were very fearful of me being attacked out in the parking lots.
Certainly, especially as a public figure, really. I mean, if you're organizing like that, it was yeah. Jamie, what about you? Any protective measures that you take, or?
Honestly, until now, I've never really felt a need to. I have considered, and I know that, a lot of people are back and forth on the whole firearms debate. I, for one, I feel as though it's something that, I mean, it's, you know, it's a personal decision for myself, and it's something that I'm probably going to go ahead and do.
So I want to talk to you for a moment. You're with Camp Rehoboth. First of all, when did you hear about it, and what was your own reaction? I mean, because you have this organization that helps out the LGBT community.
Yeah, I woke up in the morning, and that's, you know, I'm insomniac sometimes, so I was right there waking up in the middle of the night looking at Facebook of all things, and saw postings, people looking for people, wondering what was going on. So eventually, you know, the facts started coming in, and then I just realized, along with many other people, that what a tragedy, shock and disgust, and, you know, very scary and very heartbreaking to understand what happened and still try to figure out what happened.
But are you taking any other special precautions at Camp Rehoboth, or change, or thinking about any of that as a result of this?
You know, we're not taking any special precautions, but I know for myself, you want to keep in the back of your mind when you're out in a venue. This incident brings up, well, you know, now there's a possibility that something could happen. It's just, I think it's hate crimes, as much as legal protection as the LGBT community has now, seems to be a shift that as we're getting more legal protections, there's still a lot of people that don't understand or that hate this community. And I think with politicians and with other public figures coming out and trying to take rights away or villainizing the LGBT community, I think some of these actions are going to become more prevalent.
Now, and one of the things that struck me, and the reason why I wanted to do the show, is that it seems as if there's a much greater recognition now of the transgender community than I've ever seen before. As I've indicated, we've had a gay marriage, we've had gays in the military, and so on. And now it's almost as if, I know, I think it was Big Brother, the reality show, had a transgender on, Bruce Jenner, of course, on the cover. And there's something called Transcendent, I guess is a television show which features 5 transgender women. I want to turn to you, Andrea, because when you came out in 1993, that certainly was not the case.
No.
What was it like to first of all, recognize that you were transgender, and then to make that decision, particularly in those early years?
Well, in all actuality, I knew when I was 4.5. I came out to my parents, and I wasn't received welcomely at all. In an upbringing of Southern Baptists. My dad is from out in the Midwest. My mom's family is from down south. So it was difficult to be knowing that I was loved and cared for. They didn't kick me out on the street. They fed me, they clothed me, they sent me to school. They helped me pay my bills, but they didn't love me and support me for who I was. All I wanted them to do was accept me as their child. I didn't care whether if they called me by my male name or called me she. She would have been great. But once I become of age where I could actually get out of my house and get out of my environment, shopping was a thrill, a scariness. Found stores that were sympathetic. When it came right down to it, they didn't really care as long as they got the money. And then going to Baltimore, that was my outlet at that point. So going down some very dark, scary streets into neighborhoods where the bars were at. There was one particular for drag queens, and there was a few transgender people that would go there. I had been stalked leaving there. I've had people follow me home. I learned early on, just drive to the police station, sit in the parking lot. They'll leave, most likely. If they don't, then I'm going to really be scared. But you kind of your skin gets a little thick after a while, after being through all that so long. So, but nowadays it's a lot better.
Mm. Now, you mentioned, matter of fact, you came out in 1993, but you mentioned a moment ago before the show that transgender people really sort of started this thing with Stonewall. Describe a little bit about that and how you see their role in the gay rights movement.
for them help the drag queens and the transgender coming out into the public and standing up and saying, listen, this isn't right. Sometimes we have to take an extra bit of fortitude in ourselves to actually brace ourselves to go out into public. So we're kind of like already there. But spurring that Stonewall event was our largest, tremendous thing to happen for us. So we've helped the gays, we helped the lesbians, we've helped the people within LGBT. And I think at this point, this is our time, because now we've helped laid the path so that our journey will hopefully be smoother. But in all actuality, it's never smoother for each person that comes in that deals with discrimination. You still have to walk the same path, still dealing with the same struggles.
Jamie, now what about you? I'm assuming you're younger. I mean, okay.
A little bit.
So tell me a little bit about when you recognized that that you were transgender in terms of identity, and what was it like coming out? When did you come out? What was that?
Well, I'm 32. Since I was a kid, I always realized there was something that just didn't quite line up. You hit 11, 12, puberty starts, and when you are a kid, I mean, I went to church, you know what I mean? And when you spend every night and the only thing you pray for is to wake up in the morning to be a little boy, because, God, you're perfect and you can't make mistakes, but there's something wrong. You start to realize just things don't line up, and you just, it's hard to look yourself in the mirror. I did not know what being transgender was until about 2007. There was actually an Oprah show. I lived at home with my mom, and she came in the bedroom, and she's like, look, she's like, I need you to turn Oprah on because they're talking about people like you. At this point, I had come out gay, and I was like, well, what do you mean? She's like, just turn it on, you'll understand. And it was about transgender people, people born in the wrong bodies, this, that, and the other. And I watched it, and it's just like, it was a light bulb moment. I'm like, wow. About a year later, I found a therapist, talked to her for a while. I had planned on transitioning. The relationship I was in, it did not quite fit in. She had known me since we were a lot younger. It was a heartbreaking thing, so I just decided, I'll do what I can for as long as I can. Fast forward to actually 4 months ago. I've been on hormones for 4 months. The coming out, I've kind of done things a little bit differently than most people. Most people, it's just, you come out, you tell your family, your friends, your coworkers, and that's that. All of my friends have known for the last almost 10 years. My mom's the one that figured it out. You come to it to where it is today. It's kind of like, I just finally told her I started hormones. She's processing. She's not against it, but it's I've been her daughter for 32 years, and it's a very big step for her. And the thing is, my friends and family, they respect me, and I respect the fact that I've been who I am for 32 years to them. A lot of people get really hung up on pronouns. Like, my brother still apologizes, and I'm like, I said, there's going to be a day when you look at me and you're not going to want to say she or her. I said, you're transitioning with me. Just take your time. I'm not going to freak out. Like, I'm not super sensitive. I'm not, just take your time. You could call me your sister until it's right for you. So, it's a progressive thing. I'm working with them. They're working with me. As far as work goes, people kind of have an idea. I figure.
Do they know?
They do, but they don't. It's kind of like a lot of I've worked in a very male-dominated field. I'm an electrician, so a lot of them actually, since I've started 8 years ago, have always referred to me as the boy, and a lot of them already use male pronouns.
Right.
So they kind of know. I work with one guy on a regular daily basis, and he's actually explained to cashiers and stuff basically that I'm trans without knowing that he's explaining that I'm trans.
Right.
So it's like they know, but they don't. And it's like I said, it's a process. And once I get to the point where I'm absolutely 100% comfortable with everything with my employer, I just figure they're basically transitioning with me and they don't even know it. So
Right. So, by the way, Andrea, what about things like employment and so on? I mean, you obviously have a longer work span here. What was that like? I mean, would you go in dressed as you are now, or would you? I mean, what was that? How did you negotiate that one?
In the beginning, it was boy at work, girl after work. And the problem is that once an employer finds out or has an inkling, he starts compiling enough information that he can justifiably say, we're going to fire you and let you go. And that's what happened to me numerous times. I went to barber school, learned to cut hair. My father owns a shop. I worked in his shop for a great many years, and at that point I started working on my hair, started my HRT, and at a certain point I got to be so far along that it was getting very difficult to mask and hide and camouflage. And it was always a struggle with my dad. So he knew, but never confronted it. And he's just like, okay. And then finally got to the point where he says, I can't have you working here any longer because you're driving away customers. And so this is when I went to go get my CDL license.
Yeah.
And he allowed me to stay there just long enough so me to get my license so I'd have a career to go to.
Yeah.
And my regional manager from the trucking company knew that I was trans, and he wasn't happy with me. So within 9 months, he compiled enough information to have me let go as well. I nearly lost my house, and I finally got a job working at Amazon, which saved everything. They are LGBT friendly, zero tolerance, and my insurance covers my trans care, including my all my surgeries, 90% coverage. So I've been happy. I will stay with this company until I retire if they'll let me.
And when did you transition to women to wearing women's clothes all the time? You said that you were sort of on and off thing. In '93, you said you decided enough's enough. I'm going to do this period. And
it was all female clothes. Some of it was gender neutral in aspects. While I made that year's flip to being completely female. In Maryland before 9/11, it was easy to get everything without going through the court system to get your paperwork changed. Doctor's letter, go to Social Security, go to DMV. From there, go to your doctors, go to your billings. Everything gets changed after that point. And then after 9/11, everything you had to run through the court systems. Fortunately, Delaware has been very progressive in making bills applicable to us so that we can easily get our documents changed without any hassles. And Hillary Clinton got our passports done so we can get our gender markers changed on it. Maryland finally last year passed the bill so we can get our birth certificates done, get the gender markers changed. I was waiting until I had my surgery before I even touched my birth certificate. But 3 months ago, I went down to Baltimore, got the paperwork all changed out. Passport's the only thing I have to change on my gender marker. So,
has the surgery been completed yet, or
nope?
No, not yet. Okay, so you're still in the process.
Yeah.
You're thinking about it. Are you thinking about it?
With the whole gender marker thing, right now I could have it changed on my license. My fear with that is insurance, because where I haven't had a full hysterectomy or anything, I think it, a man going in to get a hysterectomy, I have a feeling the insurance company's probably not going to go for that.
You're going to notice, huh? Exactly.
Well, Mark Papuro told me that there's been that compliance within the insurance companies that they have to
All right.
comply. So there's really isn't any major issue. They can still balk at the whole idea, but they still have to cover it.
And that's been the challenge, is getting insurance companies to actually follow through with legislation that's been passed. Because there's always a loophole, unfortunately, when it comes to transgender men and women who want surgeries. Insurance companies, I know from other folks I've talked to, that they're finding ways to prevent, because it's not, they deem it a non-necessary surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know some transgender men and women who owe tens of thousands of dollars because of insurance wouldn't pick anything up.
Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest issue with the surgeons, is that right now the scheme has been is that you pay the surgeon up front, and then they will help you get the insurance company to reimburse you. Now a lot of the surgeons are saying, okay, I'll help you with your insurance to get everything done, paid for, except for my surgical costs. I want my fee up front. And still, that is a tremendous cost.
What kind of costs are we looking at? I mean, just for the surgery alone.
The actual out of cash pocket for the entire thing is $25,000.
Oh.
And that's just basic surgery.
That's just for the DCS. That's for the gender confirmation surgery. $25,000 for it.
And then obviously there's okay. And what's the cost then beyond the surgery? I mean, what's I guess hormones and all that sort of thing. What do you?
Hormones insurance usually doesn't have an issue covering. They can do the coding so that it's an endocrine system issues, and it just kind of like rolls right off the top.
So, by the way, I'm talking about employment, housing, that kind of thing. What do you guys do to help folks out there at Camp Rehoboth?
What we've done is we began some support groups, trans talk group that meets twice a month. And now we talk about generational between Jamie and Andrea. We have a lot of parents that have been coming to us saying, you know, this is what my child is going through. I'm confused. They say that they're a boy, or they say they're a girl. So where do we go? What are the resources? So we've begun a parents group that meets monthly. And then we work a lot with Equality Delaware and with Delaware Renaissance to talk and engage with politicians to make sure that there are equal rights for the LGBT community within Delaware.
Because one of the things I was when I was looking, surfing around, I mean, some of the one stat says about 700,000, I guess, transgender people in the population. Who really knows? It's about 0.3% of the population. But the things that struck me is that, for instance, there's a higher risk of suicide, 41%, attempted violence, 78%, poverty, 4 times more likely to have an income less than $10,000 a year. And there's even homelessness. So how do you? Those are real serious problems. How do you try to assist with that? What do you do for them?
Well, what we're trying to do is networking with local and statewide agencies to alleviate some of those health disparities, some of the income disparities, and some of these other issues that are happening. I know Delaware is great. We're a small state. Eastern Shore, it's a small community, so we can network with other organizations to try to help the transgender community, especially with issues with suicide is such a big concern in the community right now. Also HIV rates are very high among trans women. So we're trying to work with this community to make sure that we can reach above those national numbers that you just read.
By the way, speaking of suicide, Andrea, Jamie, was that ever something you thought about, or do you knew friends who, for instance, said, "Gee, I can't do this"? What, Andrea?
Yes, I've had friends who have committed suicide either by drugs, alcohol, gun. For me, it was vehicular twice. I was homeless for 4 months. I couldn't take a high-paying job because I didn't have a college education, only a high school degree. So taking low-income positions and jobs trying to stay under the radar as much as possible. But unfortunately, like I said before, most of the management, that's what they're focusing on, because that's the driving belt behind most of their jobs. So can't really afford to live anywhere, can't barely afford to feed yourself, which drives some people, if they're homeless, into sex work. So that becomes the issue with HIV and other diseases. So, and drug use, and so it's a downward spiral for a lot of people, and it really shouldn't be.
Jimmy, what about you?
I don't know anybody who has committed suicide. I know a few who have made attempts. Personally, suicide was never an issue. I did go through a few years of the self-mutilation through cutting. It was more of a release, just to get through. But it's really hard. Like I've done the antidepressants and the anti-anxieties, and it gets to a point sometimes where it was so bad that it was social suicide basically. I would just stay home. I would leave for work, come home, and just stay put. I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to be around myself, and you just kind of shut down. So that was really the way I dealt with things, was just to be on my own and just disconnect from everything around me.
One of the things I was reading about is they talk about is internal conflict between internal gender conflict between what you are on the inside and what you are on the outside. Is that a conflict, or do you resolve that? I mean, Andy, what do you think? I mean, that's a term I ran across.
Over a period of time, if you're able to find a therapist who is qualified and is very supportive, that you can deal with the conflicts of him and her. There was a brief time where I was dealing with a little bit of split personality aspects of it, because I was living so separated from myself. But as it is, it's always been her. To the outside world, it's him, and that part, after a while you shut off. As in parts, you actually kind of like do you look at parts of your body that actually are there, but you can't see them anymore, because you just kind of like block them out, and it becomes this blurred aspect, so you don't actually see what's there.
What about you, Jamie? What do you make of that term?
It does make sense to me. The whole, people say, quote, born in the wrong body. And for me, like growing up, I can honestly say with like the disassociation, I felt as though I lived two lives. There was my physical reality of life, everything that everyone saw. But like in my own mind, it's like I could look at situations and things and say, well, if I was born in the right body, this is what I would have done and where I would have gone and where I would be. And I did this since I was probably 4 or 5. You grow up and you play house and everything, and it was always a boy. No one ever questioned it. None of my, my cousins, nobody. It just, everything made sense. I've actually, my one cousin came to me one time and she's like, I've never seen you as a girl, ever. And this, she had no idea. She didn't know what I was dealing with. This was long before anything. She's like, I've always seen you as a boy. But you live with that, and it's as if you have two separate lives, and you're just trying to merge them together at some point so things make sense and feel better.
By the way, before we go, there's this issue that we seem to be having about restrooms. What can I say? I wanted to leave this to the end. So, Andrea, so what do you make of it? And you've had the longest history with this issue. What's going on here?
I had the longest issue because I hate public bathrooms. And some of the areas that, as time came on, they started coming out with family bathrooms. I love family bathrooms. They're single stall, single sink, and you shut the door and you lock it, and you don't have to worry about anything. Fortunately, at work, we have a few people at work that are a little unhappy with me using the women's restroom, but they don't really have anything to say about it, and it's really a non-issue. I'm there to do one thing as much as they are there to do the same thing. I'm more worried about some of the girls trying to take a peek through the crack while looking through the mirror to look back and say, okay, what's going on? But I think I heard in one report when they first started talking about the whole North Carolina thing that let's go do what England has done. There's unisex bathrooms, there's single stalls, single sinks, and you just go in and you use whatever room that's available at the time. So maybe get away from doing the whole group, large room, bunch of porcelain items in there, and just call it a day.
So, Jamie, you have familiarity with groups, with the group issue. Tell me, what do you make of it?
The way I look at it is this. They're looking at it as a lot of people see transgender as trans women. Nobody thinks about the other side of the spectrum. I know I'm 4 months in, so if whichever restroom I use, I don't have a problem either way. I've never had an issue. I've been doing it for about 10 years now, never had an issue. But what people don't think about is if we follow this law, I know trans men, full beards, muscular build, if they walk in the women's room where by legal law, this is where they want them to go, they're going to have a really big issue. It's going to resort to, no one's going to ask questions first. It's just, you're going to get drug out and beat up or whatever they want to do with you. But you're following the law.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody thinks about that side of it.
Finally, are you optimistic about where we are now? I mean, it does seem as if there's a lot of positive feedback for transgender folks. I mean, there's a lot of attention being paid. Obviously, problems have not disappeared. I mean, even with the advance of gay rights, and there's still issues there. I'll start with you, Jamie. Are you optimistic?
I am. I feel like education is really the key to everything, and I feel as though even with the negative side of things, people are becoming more educated. People are more willing to listen and try to figure out what exactly is going on. And it's sometimes you got to go through the darkness to get to the light, and it's a rough road, but I really do. I feel like it's going to get better. I really do.
Henry, what about you?
I agree. I still in a positive aspect of this of where we're going, where we're heading. I agree. Education is our biggest weapon out there. It's because of people not being educated is the fear in which a lot of this stuff is getting spurred. And people are acting out because they just don't understand and they just don't know.
So what about you? You optimistic? I mean, you deal with the whole spectrum up there.
Totally optimistic. Slow steps. But we've been doing lots of training. A lot of people have called in, state agencies, local doctor offices have called in to ask how can we better serve the transgender community. And we've been part of trainings for 50, 60, 70 people. So we see a lot of men and women, a lot of professionals reaching out in the community to learn how do we interact with the transgender community? What do we need to do? What do we need to know? So I'm very optimistic that with time, it will be a non-issue.
We've been speaking with Andrea Connor and also Jamie Marine, both transgender, as well as Saul Seeley. He's with Camp Rehoboth, an LGBT organization in Rehoboth, and we appreciate you all stopping by and having this really interesting chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
This has been Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Chris Rank produces and is our audio engineer. Don Rush is your host. For podcasts, visit our website, delmarvapublicradio.net, or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on PAC 14. To view the schedule, view the daily times, or visit pac14.org.